On my last visit to Spring Creek, I had difficulty locating it because of the high weeds. The roads were unpaved, muddy, and full of ruts. Some of the grave sites were sunken and filled with water, flowers rotting, and at least one recent burial. The viewers who contacted In Your Corner said they had come to decorate the graves of their loved ones for Memorial Day, but were shocked at the condition of the cemetery. Some of the grave markers were grown over. One couple who came to see where their burial sites were located couldn't find them and weren't sure they wanted to be buried there. All said they either could not get an answer on the Spring Creek phone number or were treated rudely. I contacted maintenance supervisor Carolyn Rohrbaugh, who explained that the former owners left a mess in the hands of the new owners, as well as some debts which made improvements slow at Spring Creek, but she said maintenance would be improved. This week, I heard from two more viewers who said maintenance was not improving. I left a message on Spring Creek's answering service that In Your Corner and some viewers would be out today. And when we arrived, we found that portable lights had been set up during the night, apparently to get the weeds cut before we arrived this morning.
We came out Sunday, and we hadn't been out here in a long time, and it was over knee-high. Weeds, grass grown up. We couldn't find any of the markers at all showing where our plots were. They were little round markers. And yesterday, my husband came back at 7, a little after 7, and it was still knee-high. And nothing had been done. And this morning, it has been mowed.
Well, it's garbage. It looks like a garbage dump.
What do they tell you? Have they?
Well, when I called, went down on class, and I went down there, and they said that they were answering service. And then I started calling, and she wouldn't return my calls, and finally she did return one of my calls, and I told her I was going to bring suit, and she said, "Get your lawyer, you can't do a damn thing about it."
Brad, there is a lot of mad, discouraged people out here. And I don't know if you've walked over this or not, but there is hundreds of graves out here, and that represents a whole lot of people.
That's true.
And being I'm out here most every week, I see those people and talk to them, and I know how they feel.
John Threadgill says the contracts with Spring Creek specify that a trust was set up using 10% of the cost of the burial plots for maintenance. He wonders where that money went. John mows his wife's gravesite himself. As a matter of fact, he takes care of 8 or 9 untended graves of people he doesn't even know. Well, when the mowing stopped today, we talked with Dale Rohrbaugh, the husband of the cemetery's maintenance manager. Dale said our last story did some good. Now, the owners have approved the purchase of their own mowing equipment.
Well, my wife said that they've authorized us to buy our own maintenance equipment, so we don't have to depend on contractors to mow it when they feel like it.
So the owners are out-of-state owners.
Yes,
that make it difficult to get things accomplished.
Yeah, but it has been.
So Dale says maintenance should be more regular now, and he says they are taking estimates and fixing the cemetery's road, so that should be forthcoming.
Two estimates now and another one verbally.
You may recall that we checked into Lightyear Television Productions after an actress called them about a job. She said they would not tell her the names of their studio directors, nor would they reveal the location of their studios, which made her suspicious. Lightyear ran ads in the newspaper that they were looking for people for television commercials and video productions. The ads also solicited people to sign up for actors' workshops, classes which cost from $60 to $100. Lightyear's operators, Larry Lemmerman and his wife Jill, who goes by the name of Wes Warner, could not or would not produce the credentials or experience to teach such classes. Well, I've also found that Lightyear does not have a state license to operate such classes and charge for them. The State Board of Private Schools tells me that Lightyear must get such a license and will be under review by the board. Now, Lightyear's operators will have to produce the necessary credentials when examined by the board. In Your Corner, we'll keep you posted on the outcome of that. And in your corner, check back with David Berry and his neighbors on Southwest 26th Street today. Last week, Berry told me the neighborhood was being overrun by rats. Rats that were nesting in the tall grass and the debris along the Burlington Railroad tracks behind their homes. Berry had put 2 pounds of rat poison out one night. He said it was all gone by morning. He had shot several rats in those tall weeds. Other neighbors put steel traps out and caught a few of the rats, but they persisted. And when David was working under his house in the plumbing, he discovered tunnels where the rodents had dug under his home. His problem was getting the grass cut and the debris picked up. David had gone through a maze of city and state offices with no results. In Your Corner learned that the State Corporation Commission's Railroad Division had some influence in the area. Bill Monger contacted the Burlington's division supervisor in Tulsa, Jerry Vaden, who said he would have a crew clean it up. And they did today, with a tractor and brush hog, and even brought in a bulldozer and a backhoe to help with the debris.
The man from the railroad sounded real convincing that he's going to come out and do his best to see that it's all cleaned up, get a little drainage on it too.
Yeah, that'd be great. They might put some ditches in there or something?
Well, he said he'd do some dozer work, cut it down. They said they were going to go after a dozer and a backhoe and get her cleaned up and knocked down. So, you're our hero, Brad.
Sound like they're going to do it all. Just a few months ago, during the night, somebody broke into Allied fencing on Northwest 10th Street. In fact, they used Allied's own truck to crash through a back wall. They stole some of Allied's blank business checks, as well as taking their safe and dragging it away. This triggered a series of events which is still affecting the company today. The stolen checks were either used by the burglars or sold to others who are professionals in the business of forging checks. But here's what surprises the gamins who own Allied Fence.
I guess what surprised me that the store owners or the managers don't call here to find out if we've given these checks out, especially when they're happening during the day.
Well, of course, Allied's owners notified their bank immediately that their checks were stolen, so they are not liable for the forged checks that are cashed at other businesses. But how do the forgers get away with it? First of all, they know how to make an authentic-looking check. Using a check protector or check cutter, they type out an amount on the check that makes it look like a payroll check. Second, they carry authentic-looking ID cards, and those who are passing the Allied company's checks keep the amounts between $100 and $200, not too suspicious. Oklahoma City police have identified one alleged suspect in Allied's case. They are looking for Robert Aubrey Lewis, a long-time check forger in this area. Lewis was released from a prison work release center here in Oklahoma City last April. He's been signing Allied's checks with the name Eldon Morgan, an assumed name. Detective Ted Carlton, who's working on the case, says there is a way to put the forgers out of business.
First and foremost, take pictorial identification of an individual if you do not know that individual as a regular customer of yours and they're attempting to cash a large check, be it on a business or a personal check. Get some valid form of identification, preferably a driver's license, and then compare that driver's license for consistency. Don't cash a check for a person whose driver's license says they're 6'4" when they appear to be about 5'5". Beyond that, frequently only a simple telephone call can mean the difference between sustaining a very large loss on a check and not doing so. Call the bank upon which the check is drawn. They can probably tell you if those checks have been reported stolen. Call the business if they are a business account type of check. Frequently, if an individual standing in front of you is a forger and he's trying to cash a forged check, by the time you finish dialing the phone, he will have run on his merry way, and probably the loss will not be sustained.
The gamins at Allied Fence hope that other businesses will call the bank or them before cashing their checks. And they hope they've found a way to prevent any more burglaries at their business. They have a new employee who will be prowling through their business during the night hours. And the new employee is very unfriendly. When I went to visit Terry Rangel, he told me he had just lost his job. He was driving a meat truck and was laid off without notice. They gave him his check, and that was it. So Terry hit the road looking for another job and found one with a record company in the city. But they told him he would first have to go to the city police station and get a license to drive a wrecker. When the police searched his background, they found a criminal record.
And they told me that because of my felony or even a misdemeanor, I couldn't get a permit to drive a wrecker.
Okay, but you didn't stop there. You checked one other place. Where was that, and what did they tell you?
Checked the DA's office, and they told me there wasn't no state or city ordinance saying that ex-felon or even a misdemeanor offense couldn't drive a wrecker or own a permit to drive a wrecker.
Okay, did you take that back to the police station?
No, I did not, because the officer up there, he acted a bit irate after I talked to him, and so I didn't bother him again.
Well, Terry felt his record shouldn't stop him from getting a job driving a wrecker. He was convicted of feloniously pointing a firearm. Terry alleged it was a case of self-defense that he lost. He served 6 months in the county jail and several years on probation, but he said he had no other trouble. In fact, he already has a commercial chauffeur's license, so why not a license to drive a wrecker?
I've done my time to society. I don't owe nobody nothing, and it's my constitutional right. You can't punish a man twice, and that's basically what they're doing.
Terry says not getting the license is pushing him onto the welfare rolls.
I haven't got a job, and because I couldn't get a permit, I don't have a job.
So how are you living?
Barely.
You able to get some food stamps, welfare?
We're checking on that today. Unemployment told me it'd be the 30th of this month before I'd ever really find anything out whether I could draw unemployment or not.
Next, I went to the city police station to find out if there really is an ordinance preventing someone with a record from getting a license to drive a wrecker. Captain Charlie Hill looked it up.
Under Section 9-511, subsection E, it states that the chief of police may issue a permit to an applicant if that applicant has not been convicted within the 5 years immediately preceding application for a permit of a crime involving honesty or veracity, violence, dangerous or deadly weapons, or more than once during that 5 years having been convicted of the use or possession of narcotics.
John Mann lives in the Newman Edition in Stillwater. He told me he had a surprise in his neighborhood when he came back from vacation recently. John noticed a tower above the rooftops across the street. He asked his neighbor what it was, but no one seemed to know. So he went over and asked some of the construction workers, and that's when he learned it was an Army ROTC and National Guard rappelling tower to be used for training, and that the Guard was also building a motor pool there. John said part of the reason he moved to the neighborhood was because he thought that area was a city park.
Well, when we moved out here, there's this area back here, you can see where the lights are, is our baseball diamonds for softball. And we talked to our realtor and talked to the neighbors, and they said this was all city land and that there should be park development, you know, moving gradually towards us. So we thought we were moving out next to a park.
I see. When you asked about this downtown, what'd you find out?
Well, I called Brad Gamble, who's in charge of the community development, and we discussed it, and he said that, I asked him if anyone from the National Guard had contacted him. He said that in the development of this, that no one from the National Guard had contacted him. And then I said, I can't believe that you didn't know anything about it. And he said, well, I didn't say I didn't know anything about it. And at that point, he shared with me that he was the commander of the National Guard who would be in charge of the development of the land, and evidently he may have made the decision on the rappelling tower too. And so at that time I realized that's where we were.
John said he was also told the city deeded the land over to the National Guard at one time, so he and some neighbors checked on that but could find no record. He called City Hall to see if a public hearing had been held on giving the city land to the National Guard, and no record could be found of that. So John started a petition drive in the neighborhood to get the tower removed and the armory. If there had been no public hearing on the project, they will take their petition to the Stillwater City Council meeting tonight. In the meantime, I went to the Stillwater City Hall to see what I could find from the city manager's office. They had been doing some research on the project.
The deed was issued to the National Guard, state of Oklahoma, actually, in 1978. And it has been recorded, and since the last news release that I saw, the book and page has been found. The decision to deed the particular parcel to the state, yes, was a subject of a public hearing. I believe it was in '78 also, at which time the anticipated National Guard armory was discussed and the decision made at that time.
Okay. So the action therefore with the Banking has changed tremendously since the first Checo card came on the scene in Oklahoma City a few years ago. Now, a customer could make withdrawals from his checking account electronically, faster and easier, eliminating long lines at the teller window or at the drive-in window. Also, there was access to your checking account on holidays, but many found frequent breakdowns in the system when they needed it most. Bank officials for Checo Card and the competing SCS cards say the technology has improved. Machines are functional around 99% of the time. In Your Corner went to find out. Using SCS and Checo Card locator booklets, we checked everyone we could find, and we did it on Labor Day, a holiday when customers might need it most.
Pulled an SCS out at 89th of Pennsylvania.
How do you go about fixing those? You think it'll be fixed today? Who do you report it to, the main office? Or I see. Out of about 50 SCS and Checo card machines, we found only one of them not working on that holiday, which would mean good service for those using the cards and in need of cash on a holiday. This one machine being out of service was no problem because there was another electronic banking facility right around the corner. Have you had any problems with when you go to get your money finding the terminal closed?
Oh, this one here is usually open. Once in a while it's closed, but most of the time it's open.
So far it hasn't been a major inconvenience?
No, sir. Not at all.
Well, we never have deposited before.
Yeah, it's...
what do you do?
We always...
What do you do? Here, give me my card back.
They won't do that.
Part of the problem with the cards come from not knowing how to use them. This family had some trouble learning how to make a deposit, but the banking card companies will teach you how. Some offer short classes, so the bugs are being worked out of the systems.
From the standpoint of security, from the standpoint of customer service, we feel that the uptime is the way to go. Well, those systems have been perfected now, and we've had a little over 99% uptime since a year ago, last July. So customers can expect to go to the machines and find a great deal more reliability than they could a few years ago.
The error rate is really very small. I'm trying to remember the numbers, but it seems at least last year, I think in total, in terms of unrecoverable funds, perhaps no more to the institutions now, perhaps no more than $1,400 or $1,500 throughout the year. Now that's a very small dollar amount, and what that says is that where there was a question on the part of the customer, the banking customer, or on the part of the institution to their customer, that this very small amount was unresolved.
Liberty Bank sponsors the Checo card, while First National sponsors the SCS system. Both say their systems are reliable and have small rates of error, but there can be mistakes, perhaps less than banking by paper at the teller window. Both say electronic banking is growing rapidly. The machines are all over town now, which raises a question of cost. Since banks are buying so many of the expensive computers, some right across the street from another, wouldn't it bring banking costs down to combine into one system instead of 2 or 3 competing systems? We'll check into that tomorrow on In Your Corner. In yesterday's report, banking officials said the bugs have been worked out of the electronic banking systems. They are more reliable and make less errors. And they say customer usage of the machines is growing, up 72% over the last year. Currently in Oklahoma City, there is a great deal of competition among electronic banking cards, SCS machines, the Checo cards, and now the Impact cards. The competition is creating a situation such as we find at this intersection at 122nd and North May. There's practically an electronic banking outlet on every corner. Is the competition costing the consumer money for all these expensive outlets? Why not combine all the systems into one interchange system and cut down on the electronic banking overkill?
I think it's worked out well. Competing systems always lead to a better product, whatever the product might be. We have two very large systems. We have some large systems evolving in Tulsa. We've had discussions already in this organization about one day merging those systems so that there'd be an interchange or a compatibility between systems which would give a plastic card utility at least statewide and maybe ultimately regionally and nationally.
Bob Harris of the Oklahoma Bankers Association helped initiate the first electronic banking system in this country, in Nebraska. There he says they have an interchange system where one card works in all the systems. He says it seems to be working out. But Willis Wheat of Liberty Bank's Checo card system likes the idea of competition.
It's awfully easy when you start creating what amounts to a utility-type operation to kind of forget about the consumer. You go through the mentality and you say, well, what other choice does the consumer have, you know? So I don't have to wake up this morning and wonder, you know, how well am I doing out here somewhere, because the motivation to do that is not there. If, on the other hand, I've got a very fine, aggressive competitor, like the SCS system, then I say, well, you know, if we're not on the ball and doing a good job servicing our customers, then we're vulnerable to that system. And that even extends over to price competition, too. So I could make an argument for both approaches, but my personal viewpoint is pro-competitive.
Bob Lowry of First National Bank's SCS card also favors competition, but he sees changes coming in the future, an expansion across the country.
If you study this, you know there are a number of emerging regional presence, and you know, I certainly think that it'll be a serious topic for consideration within you know, a 5-year time frame. Are there guarantees that there will be a national hookup? No, I don't necessarily think so. If you parallel the credit card industry, well, certainly its emergence was inevitable, but slower than perhaps was originally predicted. So projecting whether or not we'll have a national presence in 2 years or 36 months is irrelevant. The fact that it's there is what should concern the financial community.
Both card companies have expansion plans which may eventually mean a bank customer will have access to his bank account from anywhere in the country. A welcome thought in areas where many merchants hesitate to accept a check. It could help wipe out check forging. And both companies say electronic banking cuts down on costly handling of paper, which may help reduce the cost of banking in the future. Ricky Williams told me he bought a used Buick Riviera from Toon Motors in Bethany last December. He bought the car, he says, from the owner, who died about a week later. Well, Ricky claims he paid $950 cash for that car and said his father-in-law witnessed the transaction. But 6 months later, Toon Motors came and picked up the car and towed it away.
I worked my regular shift. When I got off in the morning, I went out to get in my car. I looked all over the parking lot. I knew where I parked it, and it wasn't there. So I went back into the security office and told them. He called the police out there. They took a report on it. And I didn't have this piece of paper with me. It was in the car. And so they couldn't complete the report. And when I was going by there, I noticed it sitting there. So I went over there and opened the door up and got that paper out, went in and showed it to them. Talked to him on the phone, explained to him about it. They let me have my car back, released it to me. And then the next morning, they came and got it again.
From your home?
From right out of my driveway. They didn't say anything. They already had it hooked onto the winch whenever I came out the door. I asked them what they thought they were doing. He said, well, I'm taking my car. You lied to me. And I said, no, I didn't lie to you. I've got it right here. And he said, that doesn't mean anything.
Well, what Ricky had was a purchase order for a car, but let's take a look at it. The order describes the car and the motor company. It gives the price of the car, $950, and it is signed by Ricky. However, it is not signed by the car dealer, nor is it marked paid in full or for any amount. Ricky did not have a receipt for any payment, and he did not have the title for the car. Ricky, as a matter of fact, did not have a thing to show that he paid for that car. So I checked with Tune Motors to see what paperwork they had to show whether or not the car was paid for and why it was repossessed. Officials there told me they did not repossess a car from Ricky Williams. They repossessed 2 cars from Ricky, something he didn't tell me. Mrs. Toon, wife of the deceased car lot owner, showed me the record of payment on 2 note cards, one for a used Cadillac purchased in September of '81, then another for the Riviera purchased in December. However, both note cards show no payments made since January 7th of this year. They also showed me a copy of a receipt for $50 paid January 7th. Nothing since. Officials said since the owner of the car lot died, they did not catch up with Ricky in Mr. Toon's records until a couple of months ago, and at that time, they repossessed both the cars. They said titles were never turned over to Ricky because he hadn't paid for the cars. I checked back with Ricky. He admitted getting behind in payments on the Cadillac, but says his father-in-law will verify he paid cash in full for the Riviera. However, Tune Motors also has a witness claiming that Ricky did not.